When I think about guilty pleasure movies, I kind of like to relate them to junk food. I've never really been a big junk food type person, but there are those occasions where I just really like to eat things that have absolutely no nutritional value, just, I don't know, because I just need them, I can confide in them. It's like a comfort food. So, like cookies, potato chips, what have you. And I feel the same way about movies. I get it all the time where people say, "Oh, you're always so critical and you're so nitpicky. Can't you just have fun and turn your brain off?" Well, yes, I can sometimes. I mean, yes, I will admit, I am the kind of person that likes the more esoteric, artsy type cinema, things that really make you think. Yes, that is my style. But yes, on occasion, I do like movies that really suck. And that's the exact definition of a guilty pleasure, something that you feel guilty about liking, but you just can't help it. Whether that means you like it for nostalgic purposes or for sentimental value, whatever it is. There are some movies that I like that when I mention them, people go, wow, really? But I can't help it. And it is kind of embarrassing, some of these movies, especially because I am so critical about other movies that really aren't that good. But I'm going to do my list of top 5 guilty pleasure movies. Now, I kind of am stealing this idea from the Nostalgia Chick from that guy with the glasses.com because I really like that idea of just kind of letting your hair loose and talking about things you just enjoy just because you do. So I'm going to do it like she did, from 5 to 1, 1 being the one that I feel most embarrassed about liking. So I'm going to start off with number 5. All right, number 5 is Iron Will. Yes, this movie is really, really lame. But it's not that bad. It's not as bad as some of the later ones that I'm about to get to. But this movie came out in 1994, I believe, and it stars Mackenzie Ashton, who is Sean Astin's brother, and Sean Astin played Samwise Gamgee in Lord of the Rings, for those of you who don't know. And this movie co-stars Kevin Spacey, and I'm not kidding. This is obviously uh, before Kevin Spacey could actually choose movies he wanted to do, because this is really, I think, before he was popular in Hollywood, or he was just starting to get popular. Yes, but this movie is probably as cliche as it gets. There's almost nothing original. This is so sugar coated, over the top formula, if I've ever seen one. It's not good at all. But I don't know. I kind of like it. But I like it for nostalgic reasons. It reminds me of my childhood, basically. But I'll give you the story. It's a Disney movie. It's live action, but it's made by Disney. It's about this kid named Will Stoneman, and even the name is really, really cliche. But anyway, yes, it takes place, I think, in North Dakota, and it's about dog sled racing. But anyway, his father, Will Stoneman's father, has a really kind of traumatic death. And of course, being a Disney film, the protagonist would not be a protagonist in a Disney film without parental demise, so you can really get the audience on your side emotionally. But that happens, and his parents, or his mom, is losing her farm or whatever, and so they have to find money somehow. How are they going to get money for this farm? Well, they're doing a dog sled race, which in the prize money is, enough to pay for their farm. So yes, Will Stoneman, he's 17 years old, and he's never raced before in his life, but he's going up against all these seasoned veterans, these very muscular guys, and there's even a villain who's just so over the top and ridiculous. It's hilarious. But anyway, yes. So he trains and trains, and yes, it's his first experience. But of course, I'm just going to give away the ending. A lot of these, I'm probably going to give away lots of spoilers. But these movies are not that good, so it's not like I'm really ruining anything for you. But again, this is a formula. You'll guess it before the movie ends. You'll guess it 5 minutes into the movie. And it's so bad, I'll tell you. At the very end, yes, Will Stoneman gets to the very end and he wins, of course. But he's like, I don't know, 30 yards from the finish line, and he falls over because he's so exhausted and all this stuff. And the whole audience is quiet, and they start chanting his name, and they're like, "Get up, Will Stoneman," and all this stuff. And of course, they're all of the veterans, the people who actually have lots of experience, who are a lot older, have a lot more endurance and strength than this little kid, are behind him, and they're coming up right on his heels, and just the voices just hit him where he lives, and he is able to get the strength to get up and finish in slow motion, and the music is triumphant. It's so ridiculous. But this is a movie that when I was a kid, I used to rent it all the time from the library, and I used to watch it all the time. My brother and I would do our own little dog sled races all around the house. So this movie has sentimental value for me. And it's one of the times that I really can't explain why I like it. I guess there's something about just the innocence of it, I guess, that really just gets to me. But it came on the Hallmark Channel a couple years ago, and I had not seen it in years since I was a little kid, so I decided I would watch it. And I just fell in love all over again. I mean, I was laughing the whole time, but yet I was really reminded of the innocence of my childhood. And I even saw it at some novelty bookstore the other day, and it was like $2, and I almost bought it, but I was cheap, and it was VHS too. So but anyway, yeah, and I even own the soundtrack to this movie. And the soundtrack sucks too. It is the most cookie cutter. It's like a John Williams ripoff. I mean, you can take whole musical phrases from that soundtrack and just put it next to John Williams and it sounds exactly the same. And I am totally not kidding. But flaws and all, as ridiculous as it is, I really like it. My next film, number 4, is a movie that is part 2 from a trilogy, and you'll notice that a lot of these movies that I pick are usually movies that are part 2s, part 3s, neglected movies from a failed trilogy or something like that. But this is Jurassic Park Part 2, The Lost World. This movie's terrible. It really is. And it was such a letdown compared to the exuberance and the inspirational quality that the original brought. You really do feel the creativity in that one. But this one is just, everything is just feels really lethargic and just kind of dull and gross. And the colors are not attractive. There's really no nuance in it that is really anything to admire. But again, I really kind of like it. But at least I recognize the flaws. These are all movies that, if you're going to say, I don't know what you're talking about, these movies are bad, I'm not going to debate you. Like, I completely understand where you're coming from. But for me, there's something about them, and that's why they're my guilty pleasures. So this movie, I guess the reason that I like it, well, I should say that I saw this movie before I ever saw the original Jurassic Park. So that might be one reason why I maybe like it. And of course, I like the original way more. But I saw this one first, and that's really what kind of brought me into that kind of wondrous world of dinosaurs, this wonderful imaginary world that Spielberg created. And I think part of it also is that, when I was a kid, I really thought those dinosaurs looked real. Today, of course, the computer effects look rather pedestrian compared to what they do now. But when I was a kid, I thought, wow, those dinosaurs look so real. I really loved the sequence in the trailer where the T Rex, takes it and puts it over the cliff, and Sarah's, on the glass and it's cracking and she's about to fall through into the ocean. I thought that was awesome. Now, logistically, it makes absolutely no sense and it's ridiculous. But as a kid, you think, hey, that's really cool. I used to reenact that scene all the time with my brother. And, we did a lot of that kind of stuff when we were kids. I used to make him reenact movie scenes, big shocker. But yeah, so I mean, I really like that movie a lot. But now, coming back and watching it later in my life, it comes on TV a lot. And I was watching it again maybe a few months ago. And I think I enjoyed just kind of, I got a kick out of it, I guess. I was really laughing more than anything else. And I think a lot of it has to do with Jeff Goldblum. No matter how bad a movie is, if Jeff Goldblum is in it, I can at least be entertained and laugh at how ridiculous his acting is. He, to me, is kind of on par, almost on par with Christopher Walken and William Shatner, because the acting choices he makes are just so bizarre, but so interesting at the same time. I just love his inflections and the way he says things make absolutely no sense, and it's just really, really funny. And for some reason, he's developed this sort of cult following of people. I actually have a friend who has a tattoo of Jeff Goldblum on his leg. And I'm thinking to myself, when you're 80 years old and you've got grandkids and kids, what are you going to explain to them? And he's like, I'll explain that I love Jeff Goldblum. And I was like, all right, cool. But I mean, Vince Vaughn is in this movie and Julianne Moore. And I don't know, it's really funny to me. I really enjoy watching Jeff Goldblum so much. I watch him all day. I could listen to him order food or, read my shopping list, and it just makes me laugh. So that's probably one of the reasons why I really like this movie. Now, once the movie gets to the third act where the T-Rex is taken back into the city and into civilization, that's where it really starts to lose me. And I always, even when I was a kid, I turned it off at that point. It just really sags and lacks any sort of energy. But I really like the first two-thirds. And again, I realize how bad that movie is because it's not good. But I like it. What can I say? Alright, it's just gonna get worse from here on out. But my number 3 movie is, again, part of a series, and this series happens to be Star Trek. My number three is Star Trek Generations. Yes, I like Star Trek Generations. I actually am a huge Star Trek fan, actually. I love the original series, Shatner's series, and then I also love Next Gen. Absolutely adore it. But I love the whole idea behind Star Trek. I love the camaraderie. I love the discovery aspect of it. And more than anything, I just really like the fact that it is true science fiction. Conceptually, it's interesting and it's really trying to be thought provoking, and it is about ideas. That I've always really thought was great. It's not really insulting for the most part, it's not insulting the intelligence of the viewer. Now, when it comes to the next gen movies, I will say, of course, Wrath of Khan is my all time favorite, but past that, most of the movies really don't have to say anything that profound. Oh, especially when it comes to the next gen movies. I don't think any of them are quality at all. I think all of them are letdowns compared to the show. And if I had to pick one that was probably the best, it'd probably be First Contact, but again, it's slim pickings. But I do really like Generations a lot. And again, I understand why so many people hate it. Basically, because it makes no sense. It's completely illogical. Every plot thread is messy and incoherent. And the characters, all the characters that are so loved in the show, are turned into basically caricatures of themselves. Everything is just really watered down and dumbed down. It's turned into this really schlocky action picture. But I think the reason I like it, and again, when I was a kid, I have a story about it, but when I was a kid, that I watched it, and that was the first experience I ever had with Star Trek. I had never seen the shows. I sort of had, but not really. I had never seen the original show. I didn't even know anything about the original series. I didn't know anything about William Shatner when I first saw this movie, but I was just a little kid, and I thought it was really cool. I was quite in awe visually of it, because I actually think, in terms of the visuals, it is really cool. I love Malcolm McDowell. I love seeing him as a villain. So that was really cool, and I like that part. But I think I just really like the idea of time traveling. Whether it succeeds as a plot device or not, I really like the Nexus. I liked when Picard gets to go back in time and see his family who had all died, and I like that he goes back into time and gets Shatner. Now, of course, when Shatner becomes part of this movie, it does not make sense at all. You know, like you could, when he comes back, it is the most gimmicky thing ever. They could have just had any red shirt come back. Anyone could have come back and done hand-to-hand combat with uh, Malcolm McDowell's character, but they chose Shatner because they wanted the star power, because they didn't think that Next Generation or the Next Generation movie could stand on its own. And that's completely stupid. It could have. They should have trusted in the filmmaking and trusting in the characters. But that being said, I kind of giggled. I giggled when I saw Shatner and Patrick Stewart together. It's like the two captains working together, as dumb as that sounds. And I think that some of the special effects in this movie are really, really awesome. The sequence where the Enterprise, Riker's commanding the Enterprise, and it's going down and it's about to land on the planet, that is awesome. I have seen that scene so many times. When it's going down, it's really, really intense and powerful. And just when it hits the ground, and it's cool. It is some of the best effects I've ever seen in the entire history of the franchise, the movie franchise. So that's pretty much why I like the movie. Oh, and I will say, when I was a kid, Shatner taught me about death, and I'm not gonna lie. The part where he takes on Malcolm McDowell's character, and he's on the bridge and he falls down and he dies, he's dying, and Captain Picard comes up and is saying goodbye to him. And I was watching it and I didn't understand what was going on, and all of a sudden, he dies and he freezes basically, and I was like, Daddy, he's not moving. And I was watching it with my dad, and I was like, he's not moving, why isn't he moving? And my dad's like, well, honey, he's dead. And I was like, what? But his eyes are open, because I didn't know you could die with your eyes open. And he's like, when he explained to me that that's what happens when you die sometimes, and I was so, just, I guess, not traumatized, that's too strong a word, but I was very affected by it. And so, yes, William Shatner taught me all about death as a kid. So that's always kind of stuck with me when I was a kid. And when I watch the movie now, those kind of emotions kind of come back. Again, these are all very, very ridiculous reasons to like a movie, but that's why it's a guilty pleasure.